north. Well, the bridge now coming from west, the place is called the Rock Street. I'm not too sure if you can see now, but you can see. Beyond that village, for now that hill with a sharp summit. Behind it, that's where they've been camping for about 3 weeks, waiting to see whether this new king, called King Kotwayo, is going to comply with the conditions of the ultimatum issued to him on the 11th of December 1838. Then they are waiting there for 3 weeks. It's just across the border now, which is now the Buffalo River, for 3 weeks. King Kotwayo fails. On the 11th of January 1839, the ultimatum expired. Then they started to move down to the crossing point of Rock Street into Zululand. The invasion of Zululand begins on the 11th of January 1839. And before coming up here, they've got a long way to go. They started off by beating the border chief found between Islwanda and Rock Street by the name of Sihayo. Sihayo becomes the first one to face the music on the 11th and 12th. He is my great-grandfather. While during that action now, Sihayo loses about 29 of his warriors in action, and only 36 of the soldiers were badly wounded, and they are now rushed back to the military hospital of Rock Street. But most unfortunately, many of his homesteads are all burnt down, and his cattle, sheep, goats, all confiscated, sold later to the Natal farmers later. While those events became a wake-up call to the Zulu army at Islwanda, about 55 miles northeast of here. King Kotwayo's army base is called Ulunde. Therefore, messages were received at Ulunde, whereupon King Kotwayo has already assembled about 60,000 Zulu warriors. They were just waiting. Well, to their surprise, there comes a message. They've already crossed the river. They've already killed so many people, captured livestock. Zulus thought, what are we waiting for? Our kingdom is already being invaded. Therefore, they depart to Lundi on the 17th. King Kotwayo is going to send about 35 or 40,000 Zulu warriors now, under the command of his general commander in the name of Chief Chimayo now takes the Zulus up to Islwanda. He was given the instructions by the king. One, he says now, you take the Zulu army to Islwanda. When you get there, do not allow your warriors to attack them inside those 45 positions. These are the tents here, in front of the hill here. Then, it's because of the disaster they had learned or they had experienced during the Battle of Blood River on the 16th of December 1838 against the Boers. This time they should not repeat the same mistake. Another one, he goes further now and says now, do not cross the river into Natal. It was just a border between Zululand and Natal. And he says now, please get them out of my kingdom. I don't want them, but do not cross the river to your west. Another one, he says now, do not fight in the dark as the sun goes down. You do not care about because, the fighting technique, none of the horns of the buffalo. This is now your right-hand horn, the outer horn. And this is now the left-hand horn. And the main army represented by head and chest. They can't see each other in the dark. They should always fight while the sun is up here. As the sun goes down, please, come back. Well, according to the Battle of Islwanda, the Zulu warriors could be seen descending from the high ground. Can you see those hills there? Can you see the place where you can see the road going uphill? This is now their position, massive numbers now. They could be seen descending from there, but this is now the main army breaking away from here now. And the right-hand horn had already started to do its movements beyond what you call the Moto Ridge, not to be seen by the British in the camp here. At the time, the guy called Kenneth Plain with about 1,774 men. They were just having their breakfast early that morning. They are being surrounded, but they are not aware of that. Chancellor had left this camp early that morning about 2 o'clock to those mountains, making something like a V. You can see them. He's just hiding there, having his wonderful breakfast. Well, the Zulu right-hand horn would be creeping beyond that ridge. They take their position on top of what you call Uchenana Spur. You can see those villages down here. Then they're sitting on top of that ridge then, making sure that there are what you call communications between the two camps. And then this is now the road strip. They're now cut off. They are now sitting on the reserve. Many of them are not going to fight, but the inner horn will be now fighting here. Therefore, the Battle of Islwanda takes place at about 12:30. 22nd of January, it is at 9, that afternoon. And later on, there was a solar eclipse of about 72% during the battle. Zulu warriors now, they will be seen now penetrating the camp from everywhere. Firing lines collapsed. Zulus now entered the church area here. Then that's how the camp was lost. Therefore, it was very important for them to think to save the Queen's color. Therefore, it will be taken in fact, along this route. This is now an escape route, something like an alternative route now to get out of the camp. Because they're trying to use the same route back to Rock Drift, but it's impossible. Zulus have just closed the whole thing down here. Therefore, this is now the alternative now, about 5 miles. It's a broken country, lots of rocks. And only those people, the only ones who were able to get as far as down to the Battle River were the only ones on horseback, nobody on foot. In this case, now, it looks like Zulus were faster even than those horses. Because of the rocks covered by grass, Zulus were just, jumping and killing somebody on top of his horse together with his horse. Then the Queen's color was found, in fact, it was lost in the river, but luckily found 2 weeks later and taken back to England, to the Queen in Windsor. But today is found in South Wales, in the place called Harvard Regimental Chapel in Brecon, South Wales. You can find it today, still there. Only repaired for 5 times. So the left-hand horn, we're just descending all over here. This is now something we call Black Scopy. Black Scopy is named after the guy called Major Wilson Black. He's the only Scotsman here during the Battle of Islwanda. And they are now closing in. The British now find themselves already, enclosed. They couldn't get out. They allowed the horns to complete the circle. It was just a big mistake. Well, may we move now to the system now to come the whole story. Thank you very much for coming. Great.
No, it's this gentleman. It's not for me. So we're one less seat. Are you
Ready? What are you ready?
yeah, we're ready.
Yeah, go on, fire away, get on with it.
Well, now the story continues now. You need to understand the a very, very big name. Zoo. What do you think about it? Zoo. Zoo. Well, it means heaven. It means heaven. Means heaven. We are the people of the heavens, Zulus. Named by King Shaka, who is the father and the founder of this religion. He's the one who gave this wonderful name to this people. After, raiding all these small neighboring clans, putting them together, he gave them this name, unifying them. He called them, these are the people of the heavens. Yeah. Must know that name. Zulu means heaven. Anyway, I'm not going to start my story from, around that time. Only from the times now King Kajak gets crowned. Because that's where the problem started. King Kajak gets crowned on the 1st of September 1873 by the British government of Natal. The representative is a man called Sir Theophilus Shefton. He's the secretary for the Native Affairs. He came over here in Zululand to crown King Kajak with one aim. The British now wanted to make sure that there's justice in Zululand because of different cultures. The Zulu justice system was quite confusing because it meant that, all those committing serious crimes, according to the Zulu law, we kill them. Just the Zulu law. Then that's when our neighbors in Natal started to complain. No, it's not fair. They were trying now to change, the whole of the Zulu culture because there was lots of bloodshed anyway. Then 2 cultures clashed. Lots of misunderstanding. Well, that was just such a wonderful ceremony, attended by 45,000 Zulu warriors, missionaries, traders, hunters were all present. Lots of stuff now will be bought for the king. There was a big tent in place. That's where Shefton and the King Kajak will be sitting, and that's where the Zulu king committed himself. That is going to make sure that there's peace in Zululand, no more bloodshed. Later on, they came out of that tent. Shefton has got now, in fact, has just made sure that King Kajak commits himself. Then this time now, remember, I've got now what they call the brass band, ordered from the Northern Cape. King Kajak's got a golden crown here. He's got now his leopard skin running down here to his feet, carrying his sword. Then this time, Shefton is making an official announcement to those Zulus now. He says now, Zulu, yes, your king. Look after your king. The king himself had been told to look after his people. No more bloodshed. Well, Shefton was very proud, having made now his name to be known in Zululand. Zulus, they end up calling him their chief now, the white chief. He can speak Zulu, although he mixed up now with Xhosa. Well, they ate, they drank, they danced, they parted. Lots of traditional beer, lots of meat as usual. Chieftain now will be giving about 40 head of cattle, saying thank you. This is now from the one house. Chieftain now goes back into Pietermaritzburg. But it didn't take too long. King George, sitting on top of the Zulu throne, started now to say, I'm a king. Nobody's going to tell me how to do my job. Well, we started to see him now restoring all of what he called the old traditions. There was a very famous one around this time called the washing of the spear, which always meant that all those people committing serious crimes, they get killed. You talk about adultery, stock theft and witchcraft. Those were always grouped as top crimes in the Zulu law. Then we started to see a number of these military bases, in fact, across the kingdom. The army started even to grow faster. Authorities in Natal say, now what the hell is going on in Zululand now? Under the new administration, King George also had very bitter relations with these poor people called missionaries. These people were here now coming from different congregations to do their job. And the Zulus now, not understanding them, they said now, no, we're okay here, we've got our ancestors. We don't care. Then later on, they started to think, a Zulu convert is like a spoiled Zulu. We don't want them here. They started now to kill those converts later on. And they also confused these mission stations with military bases. They thought they are going to use them as military bases, maybe to start invading their kingdom. Also in 1839, shortly after the Battle of Blood River, there was another piece of ground that was loaned by King George's father in the name of Mpande to the Boers because of their support against Dingaan. Dingaan had killed King Shaka and also had led the Zulus to the Battle of Blood River. And he gets killed now in 1840. Therefore, there was a big fight now between the two brothers, whereby young Mpande was supported by the Boers in 1839. Then later on, he gave them that piece of ground up in the north. It fell within Transvaal borders. Now, it belonged to the Boers, but it was only loaned to them only for grazing purposes. Now, Mpande dies in 1872. His son, in 1875, already sitting in power, he approaches the Boers now. He says, now, I'm a king. Can I get it back now? The Boers now, they said, never again. We got this from your dad because of our support against his enemy brother Dingaan. It's clear now there's a big tension between the Royal House and the Boers over that piece of ground being disputed. The British government of Natal had to step in trying to resolve the matter. They don't know the truth. Nothing was signed. The king had given them now that they can graze their cattle from here up to here only. 1876, somewhere in September, Shepton is going to the UK attending the big conference about Confederation. Confederation now had been thought to be the only solution in this country, had been tried successfully in Canada in 1864, so they think it's going to work also here. So as he's attending that conference, he was given what we call a royal charter, which also gave him more powers to annex each and every territories within the British colonies. At the time, the British controlled only two in this country, Natal and the Cape. Two of these remained as the Boer territories now. We've got now Transvaal and Free State. In 1866, the first diamond had been dug in Transvaal. There's been so much attention paid to Transvaal, in Transvaal. Many people had been flocking up there as fortune hunters. Well, Shepton now, by the end of that year, comes back from England now, without any waste of time. He marches straight now to Transvaal, annexing the whole of Transvaal, raising the Union Jack. Therefore, the Boers now, they go totally mad for having lost that territory because of the wealth being discovered there. Then in 1877, as you can see now, we've got such a big tension now, it keeps growing between the Zulus, the British, the Boers, and the Pedi people in the northern Transvaal, under their chief called Skukune. And in 1877, this is the time the man called Sir Bartley Frere will be sent out here by the Foreign Office. Sir Bartley Frere is Irish by birth, but had lived in the place called Llanelli in South Wales. So when he comes out here, we are accompanied by the professor from the University of Oxford. So he was out here to advise. James Fraud is a professor. He knew quite a lot about Confederation policies. He was coming out here to advise on how to do it now. Therefore, Sir Bartley Frere became the Cape Governor. This is now in March of 1877. By September of the same year, he comes down in Pietermaritzburg, Natal. That's why the British had one of their administrative capital cities at the time. And in Natal, he met up with a man called Sir Henry Buller. Buller is the governor of Natal. And at this time, Henry Buller's got lots of headaches since King George got crowned. As they met now, he says, now, we made a big mistake putting this Zulu king in power. He's such a bad guy. Since we put him in power now, the situation hasn't improved now. Lots of problems. He keeps such a big army, and they seem to be a serious threat to the safety of the crown and its citizens. Therefore, we need to destroy them. The only way to do that now is by means of delivering him an impossible ultimatum. Then failure to comply with that, will be in a good position to invade him. We know him, he's a coward. They are now trying to convince, say, Battlefrey by all means. Remember now, when the man was sent out here by the Foreign Office, he had been told, do not fight now with the Zulus at the time, because we don't have enough men to fight. They are all out in Afghanistan, during what you call the first Afghan war. So it would be impossible for us to fight on the two fronts at the same time. In other words, now, Sir Battlefrey was out here to negotiate. But now, when he gets here, the Natal authorities now in the Cape, they were trying to convince him now to prepare for this war without communicating with the home government. And also now, they go further now, saying that now, in order to fix the problem between the Zulus and the Boers over that piece of ground being disputed, there must be what you call the Boundary Commission to do investigations. Sir Battlefrey finally got convinced. He says now, it's fine. Then the Boundary Commission is going to sit at the place called the Rock Street Mission Station, starting on the 7th of March, 1878, headed by the top judge in Natal in the name of Michael Galloway, assisted by two men. One of them is a man called Colonel William Anthony Danforth from the Royal Engineers, and also the man called John Shefton, representing his brother. The senior one is busy now annexing now Transvaal. John Shefton now will be representing his brother. Therefore, the Boers and the Zulu king were all now invited now to come to make their submissions. King Tsotswayo will be represented by his prime minister in the name of Mnyamana. Mnyamana is the grandfather of the man called Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi. I think you know that name. Buthelezi.
Yeah.
There was his grandfather who came now to Rockstreet representing King Tsotswayo, and also my great-grandfather now Sihayo. Those were King Tsotswayo's senior men now, all of his advisors. They came to Rockstreet making their submissions. Then also the Boers came to make their submissions. 5 weeks later, the Boundary Commission's report was now ready and available, but most unfortunately, it's just found in favor of the Zulu King's claim. In other words, the Zulu King won the case, but the Boers lost. When the report was forwarded in Pietermaritzburg, Sir Battlefrey had a look. He was so shocked now to learn that the whole thing was turned against the Boers, because he thought the Boers are going to win the case, so that now the Boers are going to annex now their territory later on. What happens here now, the situation now in fact here will be very tense. What happens here, Sir Battlefrey rules out that at a stage we should not allow the Zulus to have an access to this information. Let us just keep it a secret for a while. Why? They wanted to see what happens in Zululand, whether King Tsotswayo in fact complies or not, whether the situation improves or not in Zululand after he got crowned. But most unfortunately, around this time, King Tsotswayo, not aware, he allows so many incidents to happen in Zululand unpunished. They were busy now collecting all of those now as their evidence. But I'm going to take only 3 as your examples out of many. There was just a number of them. One, you've got now the border chief here in the name of Sihayo. Sihayo is a member of the King's Council, and he's got about 38 wives. And he's got lots of sheep, goats, cattle, lots of maize as well. Described as a wealthy chief here. And he's been also trading with a guy called Jim Rock of Rockstreet now. And somewhere in July of 1878, Sihayo is away with the king at Ulundi. Back home, he leaves his homestead, attended by his sons and some of his brothers. So while the man was away, something happened here. Some of his wives now, they got the whole thing wrong. One of them is already pregnant from the private lover. These are the chief's wives. Big disgrace. Well, the family one day noticed that there's something fishy. One day they had a meeting, sitting down, looking into the matter. Therefore, they're very, very angry. They come up with a decision. We need to punish these ladies. You find that these ladies had already fled into Natal for the protection by the British government of Natal. And later on, there was a mob of the Zulu warriors now into Natal, looking for these women. One of them was found inside a guard hut, and she was dragged out across the Buffalo River on the Zulu soil, gently stoned to death. It's a Zulu law. According to the Zulu law, it's okay. Yeah, no problem. Well, later on, another one we found, and she was killed likewise, but on the wrong side of the river, Natal side. On the full view of the missionaries at Rockstreet now, they witnessed that incident. Without any waste of time, they sent a message in Peter Marisbeck to the High Commission. They're complaining that in the area they'd seen something shocking, women killed. Therefore, according to King Sojour's promises he had made, when he was crowned, he was to stand up and punish those culprits or hand them over. No action. Why? He thinks it's a Zulu law. It's okay. Two things. Another one, of course, now the Swazi prince by the name of Mbilini. Mbilini had just tried unsuccessfully to proclaim himself as a Swazi king, and the guy was not a direct descendant. Therefore, later on, the guy fled into Zululand with about 5,000 followers, reporting himself to the Zulu king. King Jojo, understanding that, okay, my friend, you're from the right house. I've got a piece of ground for you now, up in the north. You can stay there now and look after yourself now with your people. Then the king was trying to stop the Boers from Transvaal to get down to the sea. Later on, the guy started to steal lots of their cattle. The Boers later on complained that they are sick and tired of Sojour's friend. He steals their cattle. Something should be done. Then, for the first time, the guy raided the Boer cattle. King Sojour voluntarily paid about 100 cattle. But for the second time, the Boers complained. King Sojour said, "No, guys, why don't you shoot him yourselves? I'm sick and tired of him." He was expected to capture him and hand him over. No action again. Another one. You know, we've got now a very interesting story. There was another guy called Makhamsela. Can you try that? Makhamsela now used to be a brilliant warrior, and he gets converted now, becomes now the first Zulu martyr. And he used to be a brilliant warrior. But since the man had been, converted, Zulu warriors now, they thought, no, something's wrong with this guy. In the middle of the night or early in the morning, the guy will be seen now standing on top of the high ground, praying even louder and louder. Zulu warriors, his neighbors, were sick and tired of this noise. They started to think he's mad because of the missionaries. Therefore, one day the guy was coming from the church, and he gets surrounded by part of the Zulus, putting him down. Became the first Zulu martyr. It's clear now, other missionaries couldn't do their job now. It's quite unsafe now for them to travel in Zululand. King Sojourn was to deal with those incidents. He was to punish all those people involved. No action. You can see the situation now. Yeah, between the two. Well, I was just taking these three as your examples, but there was a number of these incidents. Taking a huge job now. Around this time, King Sojourn was still waiting for the release of the Boundary Commission's report. And on the 11th of November, on the 24th of November, the king was informed that it is going to be released on the 11th of December 1838. He was very happy. He thought he's going to win the case. Then this time now, they meet in the place called the Lower Drift of the Killer River. There's a big bridge today connecting Natal and Zululand. They said below that a fig tree on the Zulu side. By lunchtime, King Sojourn's delegation arrived. Therefore, they started now to read it out to the Zulus. And the guy who was going to read it is a man called John Wasishepkin, who was also part and parcel of the sitting of the Boundary Commission there. And the guy who was going to interpret is a guy called Mr. Bernard Finney. He's a border agent, can speak Zulu. He's been doing this now as a hobby. Therefore, to their surprise, the ultimatum that contained 4,000 words with 9 points is being delivered. The ultimatum, 4,000 words with 9 points, is being now issued to the Zulu king. And it was now thoroughly interpreted to them. Zulus now couldn't say anything. They are squatting on the grass there like this now. They were coming there now hoping to pick up now good news, winning the case. But to their surprise now, the conditions were already attached. Well, to go through. 1. Within 21 days, we want you to surrender the culprits of the border incident. One in Natal and one up in Transvaal. And because of the 2 incidents again, we want you to pay us a fine of 1,000 pure white cattle. Those are the red cattle, white ones. Not easy to hand them over. In a month's time, please disband your army. Change your Zulu marriage systems. You keep them too long, that's why they go mad, killing each other. Zulu warriors couldn't get married before the age of 30 or 35. You've got to get a permission to get married. It's not your choice. Another one says now, please allow the missionaries here to get infected to do their job without any problems. Your Zulus now, they are killing them. They are very scared now to travel in Zululand. If there is any dispute between a native and a European, that should always be resolved in front of you as a king and the British resident. Can you imagine? Traveling, up and down, attending those minor cases. And another one now says, now, if somebody had been suspected to be a wizard, Zulus didn't like wizards. They were very scared of them. That's why they were killing them big time. So this time now they say, if somebody had been suspected to be one of those, stop killing them. But instead now expel him now from this village to the next one with the approval by the British resident. They want to kill them, yeah. As a result now, the last one says now, failure to comply with all these terms, Zululand and Britain will be at war. The ultimatum, ladies and gentlemen, is just a key for the destruction of the Zulu kingdom, released now on the 11th of December 1878. Therefore, King George's delegation came back now, very, very disappointed now, and they've got a copy to hand this over now to the king. The tree under which they've been sitting is called today an ultimatum tree. I'm not too sure if it's still the same tree, but there's a tree still there and fenced off. It's a national monument today, still there. King George now having received now that piece of paper, he was so shocked now. Then luckily nearby now is a man called John Dunn. John Dunn is a trader and also a hunter. Had been smuggling guns to the Zulus, and John Dunn, for the first time the man came here, he learned that King George has got so many wives. One day the guy was very curious. He walks around, he says, now, Kechoy, I've got so many wives. I wonder how the hell do you cope with all of them? King George only says, no, it's a secret for the Zulus. Well, as time goes on, poor John Dunn, we find him now marrying a number of the Zulu ladies now, about 49 official recorded wives, producing about 108 official recorded children. John Dunn can speak Zulu, and at the time now he's got now bitter relations now with the authorities because of smuggling guns to the Zulus, obtaining them from Mozambique. Then this time now John Dunn is interpreting for King George. He says, Kechoy, looks like now you are going to be in big trouble. Why don't you take your 50 pounds and your elephant tusk, send your emissaries now to Pietermaritzburg to ask them to give you a little bit of extra time, because it looks like they haven't given you enough time. Look, river's already flooding, it is in summer. Then those people traveled from Lundi, about 500 miles on foot, to Pietermaritzburg. Upon their arrival now, they are being turned away, no excuses. Another 500 miles, coming back now to the king, to Lundi, telling him that they've been unsuccessful. Then King Ojana learns between the lines. It's clear now the king does not understand what you call the imperial demand. Then there was a meeting. All of his senior men, his advisors, were sitting around, looking into the matter. They come up with a decision. They say now, enough is enough! These British are here to take your land, your wives, your cattle. They want to capture and kill you. We're not going to comply with all these demands now. It's time for us to fight and die. We've got enough warriors to fight. We've got enough weapons to use. And they said now, the British should know that this army is as many as the hairs on the skin of a black ox. How many hairs on the skin of a black ox? Countless. Therefore, that I must tell now that the decision was made from the Zulu side now. Therefore, preparations now by Tsojo's side will be going on and on and on. And also from our west, the man called now Lieutenant General Lord Chelmsford. He gets an order from the man called Sir Frere. He says now, for God's sake, now get ready for the invasion of Zulu as quick as possible. Lord Chelmsford, remember now, he's got such a top military record now. He had been to Abyssinia, to India, had been to Egypt as well. Had done very well there now in their colonies now. But remember, he was born in 1827. He also went to Eton. You know Eton? Yeah. He went to Eton. That's where he came from. As a result now, he's got such, a top military record now. Remember the time the British troops, soldiers now described as the finest army in the world, equipped now with those Martin Henry rifles now. At the time, powerful machines. While Chelmsford now is preparing to invade the Zulu kingdom using about 5 separate columns. But after surveying the vastness of the kingdom, later on he decided to keep only 3. These 2 will remain as reserves, one based in Natal and one up in Transvaal. Therefore, remember now, while the Elder Zulu was on now here, he had to keep an eye to the Boers because he thought they are going to do something. They are very angry for the annexation of their territory. So some people now had to keep an eye to them. Therefore, Chief has got about 12,000 men for the invasion of Zululand. We've got now this column now waiting at Rockfield for 3 weeks, and they are known as the Central or the invading column, consisting of about 4,800 men. Another command of the guy called Colonel Richard Klein of the 1st 24th Regiment. And the Lord Chancellor is going to accompany them. So they arrived here on the 20th. Remember now, they had already seen a little bit of action against Sihai on the 11th and 12th. And on the 20th, here they come. This camp was only going to be used as the first base camp for their supplies now to catch up from Rock Street. They are having a long way down to London. And this is just a temporary camp, and do not confuse this now. As a result, now another one will be marching along the north, known as the Northern Region Column, under the command of the guy called Colonel Evelyn Wood. That consists of about 4,500 men. And another one coming up from the coast, known as the Coastal Region Column, under the command of the guy called Colonel James Charles Pearson, with about 2,700 men. Invasion of Zululand begins. Then, as you remember now, on the 11th, they are crossing the river into Zululand, arriving here on the 20th. It takes him now about 10 days to get up here from Rock Drift. Lots of rains, very muddy here for the wagons. Then Children now just made sure that all of his supplies are packed accordingly here, and the camp was laid now properly here. And many of their tents were seen now towards now that direction. And you couldn't see them, only the wagons were to be seen here as you are now at Rock Drift. And he had now his breakfast here. After finishing his lunch, Children now gets out of the camp here, heading off now to those mountains, making something like a V, the two mountains. He's going to check now the second base camp. The mountains now, one of them to the left is called Islwanda, another one to your right is called Magoko. Between the two mountains, Chancellor disappeared there. He's going to check where he can put the second base camp. He finds a wonderful spot there, very protected against the elements, and he's going to use that one for breakfast. Therefore, according to the theory, we still call this Lord Chancellor's breakfast spot. Nice one. Yeah. Then he returns to the camp the same evening on the 20th. When he comes back here now, he instructs two officers. One of them now is a man called Major Dardanel of the Natal Mounted Police with the Natal Companies, and also the man called Longskin. Longskin now is in charge of the Natal native contingents. The two officers had to leave the camp on the following day, the 21st, going ahead of the main column, so as to keep an eye now to that area. Then these guys now, they left this camp early that morning, and Chancellor is going to join them on the 22nd, which is now the day of the battle. And this time, they get to the base. Then now, to their surprise, there was a skirmish now. They found themselves surrounded by small pockets of the Zulus. There was a skirmish now that took place in such a way that they were convinced that this must be the Zulu main army. Then that skirmish now went on and on and on, and the Natal native contingents, they broke away. Those were the Zulus, some of them now Soto speakers now. Therefore, luckily, that skirmish now came to an end. They sent a message back to Lord Chancellor asking for more reinforcements and also wanting to change some of the orders. Chancellor wouldn't allow them to do that because he was going to join them himself on the 22nd. He thought now they'll be fine. They're armed, you know. Zulus wouldn't touch them. As a result, now Chancellor has got lots of stuff now to do here. One, he's going to appoint the commander of the camp by the name of Kenneth Pulain, and he's going to give him now those instructions. One, he says now, make sure that you keep now your pickets on top of the high ground, so as to keep an eye over them. This is now not to reach or not to plateau. Another one, he says now, make sure that your camp is laggered, using now the weapons. They've just landed that from the boss. If not, entrench yourselves. Dig the trenches. What is quite amazing now, the ground was very rocky. They tried to dig. Ooh, then they gave up. You know, above order, they thought, well, just okay, yeah, no problem, nothing will happen. And the chief now also instructed his military secretary in the name of Colonel Crelock to make a note for Colonel Danforth, waiting for his orders from Rock Drift, ordering him now to march up from Rock Drift to here. And that was delivered by the man called Smith Dorian, a young transport officer at the age of 23. Smith Dorian rode back to Rock Drift in the dark, in such a way that the guy later on, he wrote back to his parents now saying that now, Mom and Dad, I'm so pleased now to get this chance to write these few lines to you to let you that I'm still alive. But many of our men have been killed by the Zulus. But before the battle started, I had to ride back to Rock Drift in the dark early that morning. It was so dark, I couldn't even see my hand in front of my face. And I had to cross the river. I had to ride through the enemy's territory. About 8:15, the guy now galloped into the area of the camp at Rock Drift, giving that note now to Colonel Danforth, in which Danforth now was ordering him to march up here, bringing about 10 men rocket battery, and also the rest of the native troops. When he gets here, he was to assist Colonel Pulain, taking all the staff now to join him. Then Smith Dorian, luckily, in fact, he survived. He only dies later in 1934. While the man was walking on the street now in the place called walking, he gets now knocked down by the car. 1934. Yeah. Therefore, that was him now who delivered that note to Colonel Danforth. As a result, now Colonel Danforth arrives at about half past 10, 22nd of January that morning now. Before the men got up into the area of the camp here, the guy is in a hurry because Danforth had even threatened to fire him Therefore, on his way now, he came across the guy called Lieutenant Chad of the Royal Engineers. Chad was up here now. The guy was very bored now. He wanted to see the action, but Chancellor told him now, you stay here to look after the pontoon. The guy was very angry. Then, without Chancellor's knowledge, he came up here to check, how are you doing here? About 8:05, breakfast is going on. The pickets now from the high ground started now to report down to the camp that they could hear now a very funny noise. They are rattling their assacas against the shells. And that noise, came from behind the hill. Then breakfast was now interrupted. Everyone jumping to their firing lines about 1,000 yards or 1,100 yards now. The reason now, the way they defended the camp here, they started now, can you see the smoke? Those red built buildings is our local clinic. It's named after Colonel Danforth. They started from there all their way up here. And towards now the direction where you can see the school. Facing the Motor Ridge, the whole of the south had no defense. Yeah. Then they're now ready in their positions there. They all hear now the very funny noise. Could be heard now from everywhere. Then remember now, as the Zulus left Ulundi, they were also accompanied by a number of villages as well, about 5,000 of them. And they could be heard now making the noise of... These were the things they kept hearing from everywhere, but couldn't see anybody, The noise was just everywhere. The situation here now, was just very, very, you start out to think of your mom back, sitting on the veranda back home, with a cup of tea. Then you are here. And your general left you. Well, Shepard now leaves this camp now early that morning. He takes about 3,000 men with him. In the camp here, he leaves about 1,774 men. Those found themselves now attacked by 20 or 25,000 Zulu warriors. Zulu warriors now will be seen descending from the high ground. But before the camp was attacked now, Zulus have been camping behind that flat-topped mountain, that one. As you can see the village there, just opposite, across there now, that flat-topped mountain. It is called Isipezu. That's where the young film called Zulu Dawn of 1979 takes place. Not from here. Yeah. Zulus now left from that area towards now the north. That's why now they're approaching now the camp from this direction. Then the Battle of Islwanda takes place at about 12:30. Zulu warriors now will be seen now coming down here. Then those now who came down there, this is now the main army represented by head and chest. They were too exposed now to the firing lines. As you remember now, right from the beginning, the British were doing very well. Releasing fire now, Zulus were always crowded in such a way that, in fact, that was just an advantage to the British now. They didn't have to worry about, aiming their shots. It was just the case of reload and shoot. Reload and shoot. But later on, another problem occurred here. The firing lines were too far away from the reserve ammunition here. People had to run for about 1,000 yards now to supply ammunition to the firing lines, and also to run, making out to get another supplies. So when you get here, you find that your quartermaster, there were two of them, Quartermaster James Pullen and Quartermaster Bloomfield for the 1st and 2nd battalions couldn't cooperate now. If you queue up here now for your supplies, this quartermaster says now, you are not my man. It's only for my man. Then he turns you away. Then you've got to join that queue. Therefore, the queue will be seen now building up now in front of the enemy. Then there was another problem that happened here. And also, even though you get now your supply, in fact, your ammunition box, you look for the screwdriver. None of the staff now had already been loaded now. They were about to leave. Therefore, Zulus got that chance. The Zulu commander being the guy called Njingwayo could be seen standing on top of the high ground. As you can see the school. Can you see the high ground? That's where the men stood now. He's got such a perfect view. Then that rock is called Nyone Rock. It's got such a perfect view then. And at the time, the horns were about to complete their circle here. Kenneth Edward now was cut off. He was trying to get out of the camp, heading off now towards the conical hill. Now, at the back of the conical hill, that's why he bombed to his left-hand horn. Blue warriors now forcing him now to fall back here. Then in that area where you can see the smoke, we've got now what they call Danforth's Jonga. The Jonga is just a riverbed or gully. Danforth now be seen now stuck inside the Jonga there, raising fire to the Zulus. Volleys after volleys, but later on, Danforth and his men ran out of ammunition. Zulus forcing him now to fall back to the camp here. Remember now, Kenneth Danforth was also senior to Kenneth Pulane. Kenneth Pulane, although the man had been with the 24th Regiment for about 24 years, was only serving as the administrator. Knows nothing about defending the camp here. And the guy now, Kenneth Danforth, is very experienced. He also had fought many battles now. He's Irish now. And the guy now, Islwanda, is using only one hand. Remember, 1878, his horse rolled from the hill, spreading the whole of his shoulder blade here. So Islwanda, the guy will be seen now shooting with one hand. Very, very brave man. So later on now, the guy will be seen now, coming here now, he takes over from Kenneth Play. Therefore, he could be here now, shouting those words of encouragement. He says now, come on me, my man, come on me, my man. There is no point to run away from these people, I know them too well. Therefore, the native troops now, they call Danforth their chief now. Later on now, Danforth now will be seen now ordering the Natal native contingents now to hold now the circle. If not, he orders them now to leave now for Rockstrift. Then these people now are the Zulus and also Soto speakers now. They are very scared of the Zulus. They are the Zulus themselves. Therefore, they broke away, leaving such a big gap here, which the left-hand horn later on penetrated now. In other words, now the British found themselves attacked even from their rear. They are now being pushed now forward now towards now the main army. Then the horns now be now squeezing in like this. You know. This time now the British now were confused now, you know. Zulus were coming from everywhere. Each and every moment they step and kill somebody, they say, ah, da! I've eaten. Then they pull out. Ah, da! They pull out. Something to do with I've eaten. I've eaten or I've got you. Then if you were to stay nearby, you could have just heard now the noise of, you know. When they go to the next one, also they do the same, you know. In such a way that that short serving spear today is called from the noise it makes. You know. Was not nice. Well, those workers were also here from everywhere. These Zulu ladies who have been accompanying these regiments now were standing on top of the high ground there. Then they keep on making this noise of although they thought they're still going to see the men after the action and say to them, well done. But most unfortunately, some of them come down here, they get killed. They will never see them again. Therefore, because of the developments happening here, Zulu warriors now, they fought their way towards the tented area here. Lord Chelmsford, about 9:30, before the battle started, had been busy now having his breakfast, whereby now he received now the note written by Kenneth Pulain, and the horse rider arrived now, handing this over now to the man called Major Clary. Clary is one of the senior staff officers. Took it further now to Lord Chelmsford inside his mess tent. Chelmsford had a look. It reads as follows. 22nd of January, 1889, 8:05. Senior staff officer, reports have just come in. There is a huge column of the Zulus advancing towards the camp. Could you please get back to the camp? Or the camp will be taken and all of us slaughtered. It's quite amazing. This is now the one Lord Chelmsford ignored. It's not that clear. Getting on out this breakfast. Poor Major Clary is waiting patiently for his response to get back here in time. Later on, the guy says now, my lord, is there anything to be done on that? Chelmsford now replies, he says now, there is nothing to be done on that. I know how many men I left in that camp. I left more than 1,700 men to guard it. Thinking that now, okay, but how many Zulus? Does he know how many Zulus to attack the camp? It's the wrong answer. Therefore, later on, some of the people had already started to position themselves on top of the high ground. Some of them now were very experienced men now, you know, working with artillery guns. They were standing on top of the high ground, you know, doing like this. They could see the smoke. They could also hear the noise of the 7 gunners shelling the motor ridge. They've got no doubt. They know them very well. Those are the people who finally convinced Lord Chelmsford now to do something. They went down to him and said, now my lord, could you please do something? There is something happening back in the camp. Later on, what he does, he instructs now the guy called the Barclay Mill, his Royal Navy, to take his powerful binoculars now, to get on top of the hill, just on the left-hand side of that field. Then the man is checking like this. He spends about 23 minutes on top of the hill. It's been very hazy. Remember, it's been pouring with rain for the whole of that week now. Couldn't see much, but he could see some of, in fact, the tents were still in their positions, and some of the bodies he thought, those were the cattle. He thought it could be some cattle. We think those were the Zulu chiefs across the village, in that village. Zulus now creeping in the grass, raising their shakes like this, you know. So the guy now spending about 23 minutes now, finally he goes back to the breakfast spot now. He says now, it's all right, sir, the tents haven't been struck. Well, this is now totally the opposite, because according to the British standing rule in those days, it is stated clearly that if we've got a tented camp and that gets attacked, the very first thing to be done by those inside is to knock the tents down for 2 reasons. It's a way of trying to clear your fighting ground, those guy ropes. Number 2 is a good sign. You try to check the tents that to be white. You can't see them, then you hurry back, you suspect something is wrong. Carefully, appointed by Lord Chelmsford to look out of the campaign, knew nothing here, and even those men around next to him now, they had no idea now to stick on that simple instruction. Then the British now here now were fighting among the tents now. Therefore, those now far away, they thought there's no problem here. Although later on, Chelmsford received a number of reports, about 5 of them, He keeps now denying them, Some of them claiming that they reached him now very late. There was nothing he could do. Because after finishing his breakfast, now children now will be riding behind the hill, setting off now towards now southeast, instead of coming back to the camp here. Well, I'll tell you who jump now, because it's a big story. And towards now 1:30 or so, Zulu warriors now were penetrating the camp from everywhere. Those firing lines were now collapsing. The British were being squeezed in inside the tented area. This time now the commander of the camp, Kenneth Plain, realizing the firing lines are collapsing, soon ordered the men called Lieutenant Melville. Melville is English, coming from the place called Marylebone, which is central London. He says, now for God's sake, Melville, could you please run to some point of save the Queen's Color? Melville could be seen carrying the Queen's Color on top of his horse, then breaking away. At the time, some of the soldiers were still doing well, but some of them, they noticed the regimental honor being removed, started to be very curious. Why do they take it away now? Why? And it weighs about 65 pounds. Then the guy now was trying to use now the same route back to Roxy, but he ends up now joining those guys now, starting the new route, the Fugitive Trail, about 5 miles. It's a broken country, lots of rocks. And on the way, Melville catches up now this brother officer in the name of Lieutenant Colonel, the place called Drumcondra. All this way now, poor Cockle could be here shouting those words of encouragement to his friend now. For God's sake, Melville, come on, Zulu's on top of us, man. Zulu warriors now shouting, Husu, and also killing some of them now. Many of them now were killed along the bottom here, could not reach now the Balfour River. Then, only ones now managed to get down there, or the only ones on horseback, nobody on foot. When they get to the river there, the Balfour River becomes another challenge. High flood, that was in summer. Corkin now is a good swimmer and also a good horseman. Without any waste of time, the man plunged his horse into the river. Then this time now he's on Natal side now. Being on Natal side now, he goes upstream. He looks on the Zulu side now. He noticed his brother officer Melville surrounded by a part of the Zulus, and they force him now to plunge his horse into the river. Melville now gets washed away for a few yards now. And this time now, he loses now the control of his horse. Later on, he lost now the control of the Queen's Color. Then at the bottom there, the man saw somebody in the middle of the pool by the name of Captain Higginson, clinging on top of the rock in the middle of the pool. Therefore, the Queen's Color was heading off now towards the man. Melville is coming also, taken by the heavy current, knocked against the right, left, center, left. And the guy started to shout. He says, now grab the pole! For God's sake, grab the pole, man! Grab the pole! The man couldn't. The Queen's Color passengers in front of his face. And at the bottom there, the river forms a sharp bend to the left. It's already now outside the sheath. It got stuck into the rocks. Now waving like this. It's not clear whether Zulus had an idea of its importance. We doubt. They had no idea. Then this time now Melville is coming. Higginson saw him coming and he leaned forward now. He says, now, let me just try to help now that man. Then he grabs hold of him. Two of them will be seen clinging on top of that rock. And this time poor Cockle brings his horse now to rescue them. As the man is getting closer and closer, one of the Zulus, as you remember, many of them had already picked up some of the rifles from the jet. One of them now was so lucky, he managed not to strike his horse. Then this time now, Cockle's got no horse, but luckily the guy could swim without his horse. Now he gets now to these three people, Higginson, Melville and Cockle. They are kicking very hard, fighting both for their survival. And they get across now. That rock on which they clung is called today a coffin-shaped rock. Still found today, still visible. The one that saves their lives. Being on Natal side now, they thought, thanks God, was safe. We are now out of Zululand now, because it hasn't been a good place to be. Then this time now, they walk uphill, and they are terribly exhausted, especially now Melville and Cockle. As they are now going uphill, Higginson tells them now, please guys, you follow me slowly. I am going to catch those horses for you. The man now was busy rounding those horses up. Now, to his surprise, about 30 Zulu warriors were just, hiding in the grass there. And Melville and Cockle were coming up. At the time now, Cockle complained that now he couldn't move. Then Melville now keeps saying, now, come on, Cockle. The man replied with a very deep, throated voice. He says, now, I can't. I'm dead. I'm finished. And remember now, the guy had been wounded for almost 3 times. For the first time in the Eastern Cape, whereby he was playing with an African Assegai, he got his point stuck into his knee. For the second time, believe it or not, during the skirmishes on the 11th against Sihayo, whereby the guy was chasing a chicken for Lord Chelwood's supper, kissed his ankle against the rock. For the third time, could be here or in the river there. This time, the man is finished now, couldn't move. Then this time, Zulu warriors emerged, surrounding them, putting them down. Higginson, seeing the thing happening, he turns his horse away towards now Headmaker. That's where the garrison was, about 25 kilometers. And he makes a report. Now, Melville and Cockle have been killed. The Queen's Color lost. That's why on the 14th of February, there were 2 searching teams sent out to look for the bodies of Melville and Cockle. All found, buried on the spot where the guys had been killed. And also, The Queen's car will be taken up to Rock Swift, Hedmekaro, down to Pietermaritzburg, sent back to Windsor to the Queen. And today is found in South Wales, in the place called Harvard, Regimental Chapel of Brecon. Because they can find it, had only been repaired for 5 times. Therefore, Melville and Cockle were among the first British officers to be awarded posthumous Victoria Crosses in 1907, only suggested in 1905. Therefore, you go to that museum in Brecon, lots of things you can find there. That note written by Kenneth Plain, they can make a copy for you. 8:05, still to be found, they can make a copy for you from the original one. Well, coming back and now, trying to squeeze as much now. This time, Kenneth Plain could be seen sitting inside his tent, making some notes. As you remember in those days, the commander of the camp had such a big job on his shoulders now to make sure that all of his records are up to date, no matter what. As many sitting there now, to his surprise, Zulu Warrior burst inside his tent, about to finish him off now. Pulling saw him quickly taking his revolver, shooting the man, but only grazing the mouth. The Zulu Warrior now charges now. Pulling dies. The 7-pounders were found at the bottom here. The horses were trying to run with them. Then Zulus now are going to drag them all their way down to the king. And the Queen's colour lost in the river. The commander of the camp now being killed here. Those 3 things will mean a big disgrace in the British military history. It never happened before, whatever they've been fighting, but only here to Islwanda. Therefore now, Kenneth is dead. This time we've got now a number of about 24 of these people now. Those have been driven by the Zulus up to the high ground. As you can see that big grave, that big cairn there. We call it a shoulder. Then there is a cairn there. Can you see that one? Just below the mountain. We call it, in fact, this is a shoulder. And those are the last men to be killed here. This is now the sea company. And the commander of the guy called Captain Young Husband from Northumberland. You know Northumberland? Yeah. Those now have been driven up there by the Zulus. Zulus now are now, surrounding them. And they did very well right from the beginning now. But later on, they were out of ammunition. Zulu warriors now surrounding them. And later on, one of the Zulu survivors now tells the story. He says now, we saw them now standing shoulder to shoulder, fixing those long knives. And the one man shaking hands with each of his men. This time, Captain Husband must be telling his men, guys, we've got to fight and die. We've got nowhere to go. We've got no ammunition. And Zulus now, they say, as we saw them now fixing those long knives, we were now right upon them. Zulus now are so happy to see the British now using, the burners. They can use now the sheets, to fend off. Therefore, those are the last men to be killed here, before 5 o'clock anyway. As a result now, Cheswold now returns to the camp here, but he didn't want to get here in time while the sun was up here. He delays them now on purpose. He doesn't want them to see the disaster here. Then as they are approaching the camp here, it's very, very dark now. Remember, there was a solar crate now, very, very dark. They found themselves now kicking some of the strange bodies here in the dark. These 12 guys have been flattened, blood-stained. They were to walk now the whole of this camp here. There was grass, people, animals, all on top of each other here. Then Cheswold made them to camp among the dead bodies here. Some of them found themselves using those dead bodies as their pillows. The next morning, on the 23rd, Cheswold now takes them out of the camp again. He doesn't want them to see the dead. Then they get out of the camp here. On their way, the sun rose. They started to see lots of blood stains on their hands, of boots, hands. They started to say, why didn't you tell us? Why? Because now the picture is building up. As they go further, they come across that handful of the Zulus now coming from Rockseed, who have been fighting for the last 11 hours now unsuccessfully. Then the two armies now passing each other very close. Neither would fight. Neither would fight now. Different reasons. Zulus now, they thought these are the same people they killed him. And now up again. Too terrified now. We killed them, we disemboweled them, but now here they come again. Only making those war cries. Making their war cries and raking the Asakars against their shields without any action. Cheswold thought he's being surrounded, only keeping an eye now. Only to find that Zulus now, they only wanted to get home. As a result, now the Battle of Islwanda is a victory by the Zulus part, something to be interpreted as a Pyrrhic victory. More than 3,000 Zulu warriors will lose their lives against only 1,357 British soldiers here. Then 55 of them escaped now. 5 of them were top imperial officers now to leave the camp earlier. And as a result, now the Battle of Islwanda is going to lead us to the Battle of Rock Swift. The continuation of the same story here. Then all those bodies to be found here were to be disemboweled. Disemboweling was just a way of allowing the spirits now to go free, applied even to the Zulu dead. It was just an order given by King Gojo's army doctor, told the Zulus now, he says now, you kill them and you split them up. If not, you are going to have lots of mental problems. You allow their spirits now to go free. In other words, now all those bodies to be found, you are all now, split up. Very, very sad. Some of them naked now. Their uniforms taken by the enemy, Zulus. Then the Battle of Islwanda will make the Zulu name now to appear on the world map. Back home, nobody knows what's going on here. The war was not authorized. Thank you very much for coming.